the Evergreen Media Network studios, brought to you by Evergreen Media, creating cohesive marketing campaigns. Evergreen Media in Vero Beach.
Hi, friends, and welcome back to Growing Old Fearlessly. I am your host, Julie. This is the show in which we talk about the process of getting older one day at a time and going through it as gracefully as possible. Today, I want to thank Evergreen Media for making this show possible. And if you would like to find more information on how to host your own podcast, you can reach them through the website at egreenmedia.com. For my very first show that I ever did, I talked about how we get older, yes, one day at a time, but from the moment that we are born, we are all growing older. And at one point or another, we all have one thing in common, and that is that we leave this earth. Nobody leaves this place alive. So, and I like to make a little humor out of it because, you know, it can be a very serious topic, and humor helps us get through it a little bit easier. Socrates said, "Death is a very narrow theme, but it reaches a wide audience." Like I said, nobody leaves this place alive, and that's for sure. So in today's show, we're going to be talking about the end of life. And like I said, I don't want that to be a dark, gloomy topic. And even Bob Hope, when he was in his deathbed, made a little joke to his wife when she was asking him what his plans were or what he wanted, where he wanted to be buried. And he just said, "Surprise me." So with that in mind, I have somebody who's going to help me tackle this topic today. And I have from Treasure Coast Hospice, Craig Perry. Welcome.
Thank you, Julie. Thanks for Evergreen for having me on today. This is a great subject, and often I find people don't understand a lot about hospice.
And we are here to talk about that. I know that in my own personal experience, a long time ago, when my sister-in-law was passing, she was in her 30s. She went through hospice care. This was in Sarasota. And just a couple years back, my mother went through hospice care. She was in her 80s. So this kind of goes to solidify that it doesn't matter what age you are. You know, when the end is here, the end is here, and that's all there is. But hospice is here to help us. And I would love for you to explain to us what hospice is.
Okay, great. So hospice is really more of a concept. A lot of people think hospice is a national program, but it's really an idea that says that when you have an advanced illness and there may not be a cure for it, that you should be able to try to get the best quality of life that you can for the rest of the time that you have left. So in hospice, once Medicare decided to reimburse for it, most people followed their rules. And so the rule is to be eligible for hospice, you have to have a doctor say that your illness, if it followed its normal course, you would die within 6 months. It doesn't mean you have to die within 6 months. I just went to a lady's birthday party. She was 105, and she's been on hospice for 3 or 4 years, and she's still doing really well. But that's really what it is.
Okay. I have a quick question on that, because you just said the lady has been on hospice care for a few years.
Right.
Who makes that decision? Like, how did that happen?
So what happens is that when you come on hospice, you have to be certified as eligible. After 90 days, the doctor and your interdisciplinary team determine if you're still eligible, if you still have the same disease, and it's still progressing. And then after the second 90-day period, again, you will be checked to make sure that you're still certified. After that, you can have as many 60-day periods as you can do. We don't really get to pick when is our end date, but we do get to pick what care we have at that time.
So as long as somebody has a terminal disease, they qualify to be under hospice care.
Right.
Okay.
We do have about 7% of the patients that come on our service. Once we start treating them with palliative care and make them feel better, they get stabilized and maybe increase their abilities, and we have to let them off of our service. They don't qualify anymore.
Okay. And that makes sense. I know that last year when I was having huge issues with my dad, with his health and the way that his demeanor was, my brother and I, we pretty much thought that that was the end. And I remember asking the doctors if it was time for hospice, and they were like, no, he doesn't qualify right now. And I was like, okay, but my brother and I were sure that it was just months before the inevitable happened. And instead, my dad got much better, and he's doing great, and he's thriving. So obviously everything that we did has worked for him. And so if he had gone on hospice care, definitely he would have been terminated? Is that what you do? You terminate, or you just release them?
We would make a plan. We have to have a care plan so that they are taken care of when they're off our service. Eventually people come back on, but it's normal that we would make sure that they were taken care of.
Okay.
Yep.
So talk to me a little bit about the services that are provided by hospice.
Great. So when you come on to hospice, you get a whole interdisciplinary team. You have doctors, nurses, CNAs, social workers, spiritual care coordinators, and a lot of volunteers. And so actually hospice is the only Medicare service that requires that 5% of the patient care is done by volunteers. Those people will come, that's led by the nurse as the team lead, will evaluate and go over the patient, what do they need. So they may start off with a certain number of visits in a week, and as the disease progresses, it can continue up until having somebody there every single day. And the different disciplines go in, and we have every 15 days, we have to meet about every single patient with our whole team and go over what should change for their care plan. What can we do that would make them more comfortable?
Okay, and of course, the families can always reach out if there is an unexpected change.
Right, and we have a 24/7 call center, which we staff, and we have staff ready to come to somebody's house if they have a change or any questions.
I know that when my mother was going through hospice care, there was a head nurse, there was the nurse, another nurse. I don't know. There were like 2 or 3 different nurses that would come around to the house. There was another person who would come in and help bathe my mom and wash her hair. Mm-hmm. And it was very comforting to us because my mother was at home at the time. So it was very comforting for us to be able to be at home with her while she was going through this care.
Yes, we also work with the families to make sure that they're getting what they need. We work on, the CNAs can come and do the daily care. One of the things that we have is our spiritual care coordinators. Oftentimes people will decline that service because they think it's going to be someone who's going to pray at them or try to convert them or something like that, when really their job is to listen and help to meet you spiritually where you're at and then resolve issues. So maybe there's a family that has been disconnected for a long time and they don't know how to come back and resolve those issues before the patient passes away. Spiritual care coordinator are excellent at doing that.
That's great. And then you have a few other programs. I think you had mentioned something about veterans and pets.
So we have a lot of things. At Treasure Coast Hospice, we've been in this community for more than 40 years. We service Martin, St. Lucie, and Okeechobee counties. And we do a lot of things based on what our community needs. So for example, grief counseling. That's not really covered under Medicare. They don't reimburse for that. But we have individual counseling, family counseling. We have specific counseling for our children and families. And we do a lot of stuff. When you hear something happened at a school or something happened out in our community and they say counselors are on site, it's Treasure Coast Hospice. We do that. So a lot of things that we do, that we have to raise money, it's not normally covered. We have a pet program, which is phenomenal because a lot of people will not get help for themselves unless their pet is taken care of. So we have a group of volunteers that will come walk the pet, take it to the groomer, feed it, play with it, all of those things to make sure. And we also promise that if the patient passes away before the pet, that we will rehome it somewhere and not put it in a shelter. So that's a phenomenal program. We have a really strong program for veterans. We're at level 5, which is the highest you can be in this country for We Honor Veterans. And we do a lot of different things with our veterans. I don't know, take them on a last fishing trip, get their group to come in that they served with to maybe go out to dinner or something like that. We've paid rent or other things. The VA has a lot of really good coverage, but a lot of times it takes time. For us, we can do it in 5 minutes. So we raise a lot of money for that. All these programs, I think last year we spent about more than $4 million on things that were not covered that we raised money for. We're lucky to live in a very generous community.
That is great. That is great. And those two programs that you just mentioned, the pets and the veterans, are both things that are very dear to my heart. And I know that same thing to the heart of everybody around the Treasure Coast.
Right.
So we do need to mention you guys are a nonprofit organization. So
yes.
If anybody wants to help, please reach out to them and help them financially so that they can provide all of these programs to all the people who are in need. So we mentioned that the person who decides that somebody qualifies for hospice is the doctor.
Yes.
Right. So how do they make the decision and who is not qualified?
So it's important, like everything else in your healthcare, to be your own advocate, because doctors often think that if they don't have the next solution, then they're a bad doctor. So we have a team of people that go around to educate doctors on what is available and when somebody would be appropriate for hospice, to work with them, and we work with the families. If somebody is not comfortable about talking with their own doctor, they could talk to our admissions department, and some people would come to their house and evaluate what's happening and let them know what we can and can't cover. Each person is different, so it's hard to really say who would be covered and who's not. But anyone who has a life-ending, advanced illness is really eligible.
Okay. Well, tell you what, let's take a quick little break and we'll be right back.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Ralph Winook with Dale Sorensen Real Estate and ResidentialRalph.com. When you're interested in buying or selling a home, contact me. As your agent, I will work nonstop to ensure that your buying or selling experience is smooth and stress-free. I will be there for you at every stage of the process to answer your questions and help you make an informed decision. So, why wait? Contact me, Ralph Winook, and schedule a consultation with me today. Visit ResidentialRalph.com. That's right, ResidentialRalph.com.
If you operate a small business, you need services like payroll, tax compliance, HR tools, and other resources. You need Complete Employee Solutions. Vero Beach has a team of professionals, including Anthony Sammons, Matt McCain, and Jennifer Comer, who saw the need for competent payroll, HR, and employee leasing services. Call Complete Employee Solutions at 772-978-7277 or visit their website at CompleteEmployeeSolutions.com.
Sturgis Lumber and Hardware has what you need for hurricane season. Lumber and plywood, straps, ties, and bolts, plus the service to find what you need. Be ready now. Sturgis Lumber and Hardware, US 1 Vero Beach. Be hurricane ready with Sturgis Lumber and Hardware. SturgisLumber.com.
Life can seem like a constant struggle. Struggling to pay bills. Struggling to improve your health. Struggling with loving yourself through a difficult breakup. When life is a struggle, getting help shouldn't be. Visit unstruggle.org.
Advertising is essential. You've got to make people aware that you're there. We can do that with a cohesive marketing campaign from Evergreen Media. Based on your business goals, we'll create a mix of digital advertising on social media sites like Facebook, video advertising on streaming sites like Hulu and Paramount Plus, and supplement them with local TV and radio ads. Build awareness, educate, and inform the public with a cohesive marketing campaign by Evergreen Media. Check out egreenmedia.com or search online for Evergreen Media in Vero Beach.
Welcome back, my friends. We are here at Growing Old Fearlessly. We are talking about the end of life. But before we go on, I want to thank my sponsor, and that is Ralph Wanuk. He is a realtor with Dale Sorensen Real Estate. He goes by Residential Ralph. And if you have a need to buy or sell your home, find him at residentialralph.com. So let's continue our conversation here with Craig Perry. He is with Treasure Coast Hospice. And we just found out a lot of information about hospice. And now we would love to know who pays for these services.
That's a great question. So for most people, Medicare or Medicaid or their health insurance would pay. So it's something that we do. If somebody can't pay, or they have a need for that, then we do have funds for charity care. So we do not charge people for coming to hospice.
And that's because you're a nonprofit organization. So that's your way of helping the community?
Yes. Yep.
Great. Yeah, I was wondering about, who was paying, because I know with my mother, Medicare paid. But, like if something happened to me, so then my regular health insurance would kick in.
It's possible. We would check with them and see, each person has different health insurance or different stuff that's available. But either if it's not, we would look for a payer source. But if not, then we would do it under our charity care.
Okay. Well, hopefully I won't have to go through that for a long, long time from now. However, you should always be prepared and know about the services available.
Right.
So you mentioned earlier, grief counseling, grief support. And my question is, does anybody on the Treasure Coast, who qualifies to go to you for this grief counseling?
So that's great too. We also put that in as a community hospice because it's something that's not reimbursed by Medicare. But what we do is we've set that up that any person that's suffered a loss, whether they've been at hospice or not, in our area, Martin, St. Lucie, and Okeechobee, can have free counseling for grief support. We do that because it's important. It really helps our patients and our families to get back to living their lives.
Well, that is amazing. So even if the person who passed went through your hospice care or not, the family, or I don't know how they qualify, but mother, father, son, daughter,
right,
whatever, they qualify to just give your hospice a call,
just
and
call
they can
and
talk to someone.
them, and they would be happy to set you up and evaluate what's happening. We also have something that people don't often think about, which is children. So sometimes a small child will lose his brother or a grandmother and not really know how to deal with that. So we have some specialty teams that wrap around the whole family to really help them deal with that. We also sponsor a camp called Camp Good Grief. This year in February, we took 50 kids to a park for a weekend, and they got to do a lot of scavenger hunt for coping tools and then learn how to use the coping tools, go and build a totem pole to tell their story, write letters to their loved ones, work with the music therapist at a campfire to be able to enjoy all of that. And then they get to go to the water slide and the go-karts and the petting zoo. But it's a long weekend, and it really helps them understand that other kids have also had this experience, because kids don't often process stuff the same as adults.
Right. I don't think I've ever heard of this.
Right.
I don't think I've ever heard of this program.
Yep.
And I think this is very, very important for everybody in our area to realize that the kids need that extra help to get through a death in the family, even a death of a friend.
when there's for example, a shooting that happened, I've been to a school to set up for the counselors to come the next day for any kids at the school that wanted to talk about it, or the teachers' parents.
So you mentioned this a little bit earlier. When we hear that counselors were on site to help the children, it's your counselors.
It's always Treasure Coast Hospice, yes. Yep.
Wow. Protecting St. Lucie, Martin, and Okeechobee County.
Yes.
Well, I hope that there are no shootings in our area. But it is great to know about this. I know that a couple years ago, there was another death in my family, and it was my brother-in-law, and he left behind a daughter who was 9 or 10 at the time. And you just mentioned that she could have, I mean, I know she did, but probably not through hospice. But anybody in that same situation can reach out to hospice and have help for that child.
Yes, that's correct.
That is great.
And we have special people that are specially trained. One of our additions to our grief counseling this past year, maybe a little bit longer ago now, was in Florida, there's 5 adventure therapists, and we have 2 of them that work at Treasure Coast Hospice. So if you take a small kid in a room and start asking, how do you feel, what's happening, they might give you the answer of fine. But if you take them kayaking or up in a plane ride or out on a horseback trip, you get to talk to them in a different way, and it really is much more effective.
Wow, that's a great service. Thank you so much. I had no idea, and this is exactly why I have you here today.
Right.
And one of the reasons that we are talking about children, I know that we are growing old fearlessly, but I personally am in that sandwiched generation to where I'm taking care of my dad. I already took care of my mother, but I still have children. They might be a little older children than the children that we're talking about, but they're still my kids. And so it is important to talk even about the smaller children in our lives, because that is part of how we grow through life. And it's all a process and part of that day-to-day of getting older. Tell me a little bit more about, I know that you had mentioned inpatient units at hospice. So tell us a little bit more about that.
So that's also something that we have that at Treasure Coast Hospice is not a common thing in our industry. And what we use that for is if most people are taken care of at home. We see more than 500 people each day, 4,000 people in a year, I think 5,200 grief counseling sessions. In our inpatient units, we use that to take care of people that have something that can't be stabilized at home. So we can bring them into our inpatient unit. It's state of the art. It's 32 private rooms. We can stabilize their condition. Usually they're there for 3 or 4 days and they go back home. The other part that we use it for is if caregivers are the hardest working people ever and they sometimes get burned out. So if the team notices they're being burned out, we can bring the patient to our inpatient unit for 5 days out of a month and then let the caregiver go to a wedding or get their hair done or walk on the beach, whatever they want.
Another great service.
Mm-hmm.
Greg, how do people reach Treasure Coast Hospice?
They can look us up online at treasurehealth.org, or they can call our 24-hour hotline call center, 772-403-4500.
Thank you. So for all of you who are either watching or listening today at whatever time that may be, find out a little bit more about hospice in your area, because some of you may not be here on the Treasure Coast, and find out more about the services that are provided, and if there is more than one hospice service provided in your area, because there are differences. Before a medical crisis comes up, make sure that you have all of your documents and everything in line so that you know what to do when that moment arrives. I do want to add, again, that sense of humor, that little bit, the ability to laugh. Don't be afraid to laugh. Laugh makes everything better. I talked about it last week. I'm talking about it again. So I have a few quotes from some very well-known comedians, and they all have to do with death. From our fashion's grandma, Joan Rivers, can we talk? Does fashion matter? Always, though not quite as much after death. George Carlin, if no one knows when a person is going to die, how can we say he died prematurely? Johnny Carson, death is nature's way of telling us to slow down. So slow down, people. Robin Williams, our job is improving the quality of life, not just delaying death. So go out there, improve the quality of life. Everybody, don't be afraid to grow old fearlessly. We'll see you next time. Take care.